Hey y'all, it's your girl Millie Chun, and I am just returning from the homegoing of President Jimmy Carter. He passed away at 100 years old, and today they had his funeral in DC, and it was absolutely beautiful. And there is a question that needs to be answered before we finish this. Last night in Washington, D.C., even though the temps were 23 degrees, as you can see, there were people in line on their way to the Capitol building to pay their respects to President Jimmy Carter. And the weather did not deter them in any way. This is such a beautiful sight. Former presidents were in attendance, first ladies were in attendance, except for one. There you see President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And there was a lot of discussion about the seating of Barack Obama and Donald Trump. As soon as Donald Trump came in, he shook hands with Mike Pence and he was seated. And then Barack Obama came in and he sat down. He was seated next to Donald Trump. And as soon as Barack finished talking and shaking hands with everybody who respectfully stood up for him, after he sat down next to Donald Trump, it was like an immediate conversation. I feel like Donald is a fan of Barack Obama's, and he probably wanted to know, like, what is his next steps and how can he get the black people on his side. But this was something else. His grandson, Jason, spoke beautifully about him and his legacy, how he helped, how he worked with Habitat for Humanity, how he would see the soul of a person and his contribution to America, and how he was willing to understand across the lines. Like, it was just beautiful what he said about his grandfather. And then Amy Carter, like, I realized Amy is about, what, 70 something years old? She was the first daughter. She was their only child. And I remember her as a child in the White House. I don't know how young I was, but I do remember Amy Carter. His grandson, James Carter, did a gospel reading from Matthew 5, 1 through 16. It was absolutely beautiful. And when President Biden spoke, I felt like he used this moment not only to speak of his friend, but also to throw a couple of daggers at Donald Trump. He talked about humanizing people. He talked about loving of people. He talked about what a good person he was. He talked about how fair he was and what a good friend he was and how loving he was. And there were a lot of things that Donald Trump does not resonate with. And I really and truly hope that he listened, because between Jason and Joe Biden, there was a lesson for Donald Trump to learn about how he is going to move forward in America. It was a great, maybe this was Jimmy's way of speaking to Donald Trump. I don't know. But it was definitely a great class. And I really hope he paid attention. But then again, he probably did not. Andrew Young delivered such a good eulogy. He spoke about being black in Georgia. He spoke about where he's from, Plains, Georgia. He talked about how he didn't like to go through there and the sheriff that gave him a lot of problems. And when he met Jimmy Carter, he talked about how he told Jimmy what he knew about Plains, and he mentioned the sheriff, and Jimmy Carter let him know that, oh yeah, that's a good friend of mine. But he said as he had gone on, he saw how he moves and how he cares and how he makes these differences. And this was just really beautiful coming from Andrew Young. He's 93 years old, I believe. And he delivered a beautiful eulogy. He had race in there, but it was delivered very delicately. And he just talked about how he loved him and what a great president he was. Like I said, I hope the latter was really listening. Then Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood sung President Carter's favorite song, Imagine. And they are close to him because they worked with him on the Habitat of Humanity projects. So this was just done so beautifully. But with everyone in attendance, there was someone who was absent. And I know this is going to be a big question, so let's just get into it. So I'm sure everybody wants to know, why was Michelle Obama not at Jimmy Carter's funeral? Well, the former First Lady reported that there was a scheduling conflict and she remained in Hawaii where she had been on an extended vacation. Asked why she was absent from Carter's funeral, Michelle Obama's office issued a statement on Thursday saying that her thoughts and prayers are with the late former president's family, but otherwise did not say where she was or explain her absence. Now, we can talk about that later, but that's why she wasn't there. This whole entire funeral showed you exactly who Jimmy Carter was. He was a great family man. He was a great person. He was a great president. And if you're in Georgia and you have a chance to go to his library, please do that. It was very insightful and it gives you an eye into what he dealt with during those times. But now he can rest well with his love, Rosalind, forever. Rest well, sir. Bye, y'all.